Welcome to my neighborhood, where I'll interview several industry luminaries and interesting people who are changing the state of the art in accounting software technology. Some of my guests are CEOs of leading corporations that you may have already heard of, maybe you're already using their products, or I think will soon be using their products, as well as some interesting thought leaders who help us learn more about technology and how to put it to use. Today we have Seth David, a great friend of mine and a graduate of accounting from Pace University. He's worked at CPA firms as a staff auditor. He's also been the CFO of Conscious Space, a real estate development company. He has recently just founded School of Bookkeeping, where he is the president and founder. Welcome to the neighborhood, Seth, all the way down in Los Angeles on a remote connection with GoToMeeting. How are you doing, Seth?
Good, and I want to thank you, Doug, for having me on here. It's an honor.
Great. Well, you and I have known each other for many years now, and we've done some work together and continue to do that. You've spoken at our conference. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you kind of came to doing training and doing accounting software consulting and speaking at conferences like ours. What kind of brought you to this?
Well, Doug, it's kind of a long story, but if I had to really go back to the beginning, I'd say that it all started really when I was working as a stockbroker on Wall Street, and I had decided it was time to go back to school because I had never gotten an actual degree. And at that time, I went to my father for guidance, as I often still do, and his suggestion was get an accounting degree because you'll always be able to find work as an accountant.
Yeah, I like that advice. I tell every high school kid I know and every college kid, take some accounting, because at least what you have then is the ability to kind of the language of business. You can take accounting in so many different ways, and obviously you've taken it both to do. You were an auditor, and then you were actually a consultant for QuickBooks, as we all have been for so many years, and now you're doing training. So you've gone a lot of different ways with this accounting knowledge, right?
Yeah, and to speak to an experience very personally about this, I want to speak to really what drives me towards the training, because that's kind of where it's at for me today. And more I'm steering my business away from the consulting and into the training. That's why we relaunched schoolofbookkeeping.com this year, because it's really all about the training there. And I have to go back to, shortly after I went back to school, got out there and started working. And as I know you're aware, and lots of people who know me are aware, I had a battle with drug addiction and alcoholism, which finally came to an end on April 5th of 1999. And in that battle, in the course of my recovery from drug addiction, what I learned there was that if I was going to survive, if I was going to stay alive, I was going to have to learn to go through a process at the end of which there's one basic mission in place, which is go help others. I have to go help others get through the same process. And by helping them, I get to stay clean. I get to stay sober. And that translates very specifically into the training world for me, because it's the same thing. Even though in this case I'm getting paid for it, I get to help people. I get to see the light come on in their eyes when I've helped them learn something that they weren't able to learn on their own. And when I get that gratification that comes from the gratitude that they express to me, there's no better payday that I ever get to experience.
Yeah, that really resonates with me, because I've done training now for 20 years, and I in some ways I feel like I was born to teach. It's something in me, which you just expressed very well, that just I get so much enjoyment when the audience says, "Aha! Oh, and now I understand. Oh, thank you so much. You've made my life so much more simple." And you're doing that all the time. We do these hangouts every Friday on Google Plus. And we're just talking amongst basically friends, but really helping each other identify different products, different ways of working. We're even playing with software and saying, hey, this works this way and that way. And you kind of lead that. And I think that's a really neat thing that you're doing.
Well, and I love that. I love that. That's why, you and I have to be careful when we get out together, because we can go for hours saying, hey, look at this and look at that. And, we're like kids in a playground playing with our toys.
Yeah.
But that's where the passion is. That's the inspiration for me, is because I love doing this stuff so much that I can't help but do what I can to translate that to others. And for me, it's the money secondary. It's more about being able to show people and get excited and say, "Oh my God, look at this! Look how much this tool can help you and make your."
Yeah, You
And
know,
that's where the passion really comes from.
yeah, you and I did a webinar, I think it was a year ago, on agility. Just talk to me a little bit about that topic. I call it agility trumps ability in this new world of all these tools and the web and all the internet connections between things, that we need to be more agile as opposed to able. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, for me, it's maybe easier than some because I do love to play with these things. For others, it's more of a burden because they just have to learn the tool to get the job done.
Right.
And I think it's all perspective there, because if I can show somebody how, by flipping their perspective just slightly, from looking at it as something I have to do to looking at it as something that's fun to play with, then it changes the whole mindset. And it's 90% mental, really. And I think that's true on so many levels of life. Is that it's all mental. It's all our mindset, our mind state. And so for me, it's exciting because I think agility is important. I'm going to get lots of different clients or students walking in my door, and they're going to be accustomed to using different tools. And so for me as the provider, I feel like it's important to be able to be agile, to be able to say, you work with Dropbox? No problem, we'll work with Dropbox. You're in Google Drive? Great, let's do Google Drive. Whatever tool you're accustomed to using with, I'll meet you there. I'll work with you, and then I'll use that tool as the, in whatever way we need, so that I can jump from there and show you what other tools I'm using to help broaden the scope and simplify whatever process.
I think that's I'm going to stay on this point a little bit. It's an important thing for accounting firms to hear, I think, because it is, by its very nature, the practice of accounting is to repeat processes and streamline processes and put workflows in place and put A and then B and then C and then D, F. So one of the things that you and I are doing a lot of is investigating other tools that'll help us maybe jump from A to Z much faster, using a more efficient tool, as opposed to always just going to a spreadsheet and a tax software program and that's all we know, and getting shoeboxes from clients. So this agility thing is, to me, the lifeblood of making a more efficient practice. And you teach that.
Yeah, and I think that the core process can be streamlined, but it's the tools, it's the things we plug into that process along the way that can and should be able to be easily swapped out.
Right.
Right? And one thing that I do, because you also need the consistency. So one thing I do internally is, my sort of app of choice for file management and storage internally is Google Drive. Because I use the whole Google Apps world. So what I do is, when I have a client who's using Dropbox or ShareFile, I actually use a syncing tool that says, okay, here's the client's file structure in Dropbox, but we're going to work on it in Google Drive, and when we're done, we're going to hit sync, and it syncs up the files between our Google Drive side and the client's Dropbox side. Yes, we're duplicating the files on our computer locally in 2 different folders, but it basically serves as that bridge between what we've chosen to use and what the client uses. So we're able to use both, but we still have the consistency of, here's the tool that we use internally at Nerd Enterprises or schoolofbookkeeping.com.
Right. So you talked about your difficulty, with addiction and all, and overcoming that, and I really appreciate you kind of bearing your soul in that way. I think it's really big of you to be able to kind of look at that and then actually use that for power to empower yourself now. What are some of the other difficulties that you're dealing with today, separate from that, but you go to work and you've got certain difficulties that must be getting in your way, or you're morphing around. How do you deal with these things?
Well, certainly time management, especially the more I grow and the more, sort of popular I get on the internet and what have you, the more I have people sort of tugging on me and saying, Seth, we want you to do this. Seth, we want you to look at this tool. We want you to look at that tool. Can you do videos on this? And so on and so forth. And it's trying to balance all of that without offending somebody and trying to impress upon them that, hey, I'll do what I can when I can, but I have to prioritize. And, so staying focused. One of the things that I've learned most recently, I think, along this vein, is that, and it's one of the reasons I've really steered myself and my firm more towards training and away from consulting, is this notion that, we need to focus on what we do best. I might be able to do a lot of things really well, but if I can focus primarily on what I do best, and avoid all the distractions, then that's where I can really become a mega success and really blow this up into something huge where I can be of maximum help to others because I am focused on what I do best and I'm not allowing those distractions.
Yeah. How do you
minimizing the amount of them?
Yeah, excuse me. How do you deal with? Hey, Seth, I just have a quick question.
I love that. We joke around that. A quick question means I need free advice, right?
That's exactly.
Which is fine. I have a couple of sort of rules that I employ here. One, in terms of email, I have the 3-sentence rule, right? So what that means is it's like Twitter. I write a 3-sentence response. I can't necessarily limit an email to 140 characters. If I could, I would. But I write a 3-sentence response. If I can't get the response done in 3 sentences, then we need to get on the phone. And what I'll do is I'll gauge it. It's usually based on instinct more than anything else, so I can't give you an exact formula to this. But at a certain point, it'll sort of go off in me. The alarm will go off internally that says, okay, it's time to, and this goes into the talk about sales and how to sell. The alarm will go off inside me that says, okay, it's time to turn on sales mode, which means basically I'm going to close them now. And internally I'm going to say, okay, I've given them a bunch of free help. Now it's time to say, hey, if you want to go further, let's go sign up for a session. And, we talk about sales and how to sell. And I wrote a post recently called Selling from My Inbox that talks all about this kind of stuff. That we have to go out there and be willing to help people without charging them, because otherwise it just seems selfish and it's the exact opposite of what I described earlier. But at a certain point, we need to make a living too. So it's finding that balance, and I think it's just really an internal barometer. At a certain point, you'll know when you've gone as far as you feel comfortable going without saying, hey, you know what, I'm happy to help you, but let's have you sign up for a session.
Seth, you just spoke a little bit about selling, and I see you as a very good salesman in the sense of someone that I can immediately trust and all that stuff, and I'll pretty much buy whatever you're selling. But most accountants, I think, are allergic to this concept of selling. If I want to get better at selling, do you have advice for me?
I do. It's funny. That was actually another post I recently wrote, Selling from My Inbox Part 2. The key to selling is not selling. Mm-hmm. The key to selling is being enthusiastic about what you're doing. And I've shared with you the story before about how when I was working as a stockbroker, one of the top sales trainers that I had taught us something that stuck with me ever since. He taught us that the word enthusiasm ends with the letters IASM.
Oh, yeah.
And those letters stand for I am sold myself. If I'm sold on something, if I'm sold on the benefits of what I'm offering to somebody, then I don't have to sell. I just have to let them see and hear the excitement that I have over what I'm doing and what I can do for them, and that will translate. That's why I like to get on the phone with people. When I started doing videos, and I hired an expert, and he said to me, Seth, what do you want people to do? And I said, well, I want them to hire me. And he says, no, that's not good enough. You need to go deeper than that. You need to be more specific. What action would you like them to take after they're finished watching one of your videos? And I said, well, I'd like them to get on the phone with me because I'm comfortable on the phone. It goes back to my experience as a stockbroker. We were taught in that world how to hard sell on the phone. That's not the way I do it today.
Right.
But still, the experience gave me a very solid foundation for how to sell. And what that foundation wound up evolving into, to answer your question, what do accountants need to do to sell? Don't worry about selling. Just be enthusiastic about what you're doing. Let that enthusiasm, let that energy translate across the phone lines or across the desk, depending where you are, and you'll have no problem getting new business. I promise that.
Yeah, I've focused a lot on what the buzzword out there is change management, but I like to call it change leadership. To me, this is similar to what you're talking about. If you're passionate and sold yourself, you're really leading people towards whatever it is you want them to change, and maybe that's buy, but it's leading, right?
Yeah, and I like to use the example. Think about it in your personal life, because this is where we can all relate in terms of an experience where we've done an excellent job of selling.
Right.
Is think about the last time that you were so excited about something you wanted to do, and maybe it was talking your wife into going on vacation with you, or talking to a friend about something you wanted to do together, and you were so hyped up on the idea that you were all excited and you couldn't stop talking about it. Your voice goes up a few octaves. The speech pattern is a little faster than normal that you have. Those are all byproducts of what happens when you're excited about something. And excitement or enthusiasm is what sells.
Right. I think I'm going to kind of morph on that too. The concept of providing compliance services in the accounting profession, I'll do your taxes, I'll do your financial statement, is something we've all done for a long time now. But if we can get into the mode of here are the numbers, but here's what they mean, becoming more of an advisor, that's another sales or leadership kind of challenge, right?
Absolutely, and that's where it's funny. People think of accounting as being dry and boring, and that's where I think different. I think that accounting can be extremely exciting. Again, it's perspective.
Right.
Right. If I change my perspective on it, if I stop thinking of accounting as something I have to do, something I need to pay a bookkeeper to get the books together so I can get a tax return done, and if instead I think of it as, why do people go into business for themselves? They go into business. The first answer people usually give is really the wrong answer, in my opinion. They'll say, oh, I wanted to make more money. That's not the right answer, because I could make more money climbing the corporate ladder in a big company and just working hard there. So making more money isn't the right motive for wanting to start a new business. The right motive is you want the freedom that comes with having your own business. You want the freedom to choose whom I work with, when I work, where I work, all those things. And so, going back to the core question here, where is the accounting getting exciting? It's because the accounting is when it starts being used as the tool that it should be used as,
Right.
which is the tool where I can gauge how much money am I making, how well am I doing, how efficiently are we operating. When I start understanding how to use those numbers well beyond a tax return and well into the area of how do I run my business and make important decisions based on that, that's exciting. That's accounting.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about working from home or working remotely from offices, because I see you're doing that. I've done that. When I started the Sleeter group, we were out of my house for our first 6 years were all in the house, and I didn't have a problem with that. But I think it has a stigma, certainly to corporate America. Talk to me about how you make that work for you and why you do it that way versus going and getting a big office building.
Right. Well, and tell that to Steve. Well, if it wasn't too late, tell that to Steve Jobs, because he started in his garage too.
Yeah. All right.
But first of all, I look at it as a blessing that I get to get up every day and do this. Especially living in Los Angeles, I don't have to deal with traffic, which is that in itself is a blessing. It's important, though, that I share with you. Years ago, I would not have been ready for this. I would not have been mature enough for this, because it would have been too easy for me to say, well, I'm home, nobody's expecting me to be anywhere. Let me blow the work off and go hang out in downtown Burbank for the day. Let me go walk around, San Fernando Boulevard or what have you, and blow off the work. The reason that thought doesn't even cross my mind today is because I'm so ignited about what I'm doing. I can't wait to get from the bed over to the desk here and get started, And I think it brings up another important point. I wrote a post recently that was entitled something like, I didn't have to get dressed today and I still made money. It was something like that. I've been writing a little more edgy stuff, trying to appeal to people on that level, because that's what gets people excited, is making money, let's face it.
Yeah.
So I've written a few posts along those lines, and I'm about to issue another post probably later this week, as of the time we're having this conversation, about how even though I said that I don't have to get up and get dressed every day to go make a living, and that's a blessing, I still do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because again, it's mindset. It's 90% mental, which means that I still, even though I'm working from home, I still get in the shower and get dressed as though I'm going to my office.
Right.
This is my office, and that helps bring me into the mindset that I need to be in to have a productive.
But I think you kind of touched on it, and something that I kind of believe is it's still good for, like, right out of college, getting your first job and all. It's still, I think, very healthy or valuable for your career to go to an office with a team, understand the business world by having one of those jobs. The freedom you're getting from being at your home, you sort of earned by already having all this experience of how business works in general, right?
Yes, and I definitely wouldn't recommend working out of your home right out of college. I definitely agree with you there. I'm able to do this because of the experiences I've had before, which included working, in a professional environment for big companies. And even then, I remember they started to have this idea of telecommuting,
right,
where, some employees were allowed to work from home, but they only gave that out to employees who had really proven themselves that they were going to be motivated enough to be productive at home.
Yeah. Tell me about your first job out of college.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the first job out of college was actually working for a company called United Government Services. And the name of the company got me excited. I was like, wow, it sounds, ominous. United Government Services. It was actually a division of Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Wisconsin, providing audits for home health agencies mostly. They were Medicare providers.
Uh-huh.
So I guess Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wisconsin had the contract for New York, New Jersey, and then they had, interestingly enough, part of the same territory was Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So I got to go. We never went to the Virgin Islands, but I got to go to Puerto Rico to do audits there, which was interesting.
Cool. It's funny. I'm watching you as you're describing that. I can see you're bored to death with that job that you had compared to what you do today. Your eyes kind of go down. Yeah, well, I was an auditor. So how'd you get from being this auditor type thing to coming out to California and doing all of the business that you're doing now? Talk about that process from auditing to becoming a consultant.
Sure. My recovery started right in the middle of that. It was, during that time, right after I graduated from college, and now that I had a job making a full-time living, my drug addiction kicked into overdrive at that point because I could afford more. I could afford to do more, and I could afford to destroy my life that much more.
Oh, man.
What happened?
No.
Oh.
I'm just sorry for that, to hear that. So money actually made it worse for you at first.
It sure did, because now I had more of a flow of income. So, and quite frankly, looking back, the setup in some respects, and in kind of a negative way, was perfect, because I was working in an office that was right near the campus where I went to college, which is where my supply came from. It was from a fraternity brother who, lived in the dorms, high traffic area, no suspicion, right? So it was very easy for me to go over at lunchtime and, get what I needed to get and continue to destroy myself. At the same time, don't feel bad, because I look back on the experience now as all positive, because all of it led me to where I am today. All of those collective experiences, fortunately, thank God, I was able to, get into the process of recovery and change my life. Mm-hmm. But all that happened in the past has shaped who I am today. So I have absolutely no regrets about that. At the same time, because that process of recovery for me began right in the middle of that, that's what landed me in California. And that's what landed me in a place where I really had to start over on every possible level of life, spiritually, mentally, physically, every area, even financially. I had no money. It was all spent. If anything, I owed a bunch of money. I had negative net worth at that stage of my life. And there I was, 28 years old, and I remember getting the letters about my 10-year high school reunion and thinking, God, this is what my life has come to. I'm in rehab during my 10-year high school reunion. But it really, then it hit me, and probably the real turning point for me in all of this was right at that time, at the right time, I heard a quote, and as far as I know, it's not known whose quote this originally is, but the quote is that nothing is the place of infinite possibility. And that's where I'd gotten to. I'd gotten back to zero, which meant that I had a chance to turn around and say, all right, now I'm in a place of infinite possibility. I can start over. I can do anything I want to. I think of like the $6 Million Man. Remember that show? Where it's like I can be built better, stronger, faster than I ever was before. The bionic life, if you will, was about to begin for me. And so it launched me. Now, of course, at first I had to do what I had to do to survive. I had to get a job. I went to a temp agency. I just mustered up what resources I could to get back on my feet. But I found myself wanting more out of life. I found myself wanting to do more. When I eventually got to work for a CPA firm, I found myself getting pigeonholed somewhat. It was work I enjoyed doing, but I was pigeonholed. I was going to be doing nothing but Excel and cutting up data and preparing reporting for the SEC, assuming that's where I stayed for the rest of my career.
Well, pause right there, because if that's where you got your Excel training, that's one of the things I happen to know you're really the best in the world at. So it was useful for you.
Without a doubt. And that's not where I got the original training. It was because I had that skill that they put me there. They recognized, oh, this guy knows Excel really well. Let's get him into, we had specialized in bankruptcy cases, and there was a lot of data coming in, how to be organized and cut up and so on. The Excel skills, actually, I taught myself along the way.
Well, right, and talking about going back to our agility conversation, so many things that you can do with Excel because you're very deeply skilled at it, provides you with agility to get certain things done with data moving around in the accounting place. So it's I think served you quite well.
No
When I have a problem,
we talk about the PayPal thing, right? And
yeah.
the reason that works for me and it wouldn't work for a lot of other people is because I can very quickly manipulate the data in Excel and get it from there into QuickBooks through a lot of
Right.
keystroke maneuvering and so on.
Yeah, so there's no skill that's not worth having, especially when it's a tool that is about data.
I really believe, and to answer that question on really a very purely spiritual level, Doug,
Mm-hmm.
everything we're doing today, right now, in this very moment, is building on something we're going to need it for in the future.
Yeah.
Without question. I believe strongly that whatever's going on in your life right now it needs to go on to build on something you're going to be experiencing in the future. And you can't necessarily see what that is right now. It's impossible. But eventually, that's why they say hindsight's 20/20, because I can always look back eventually and see why that experience was necessary, even though it might have seemed bad at the time, because I needed that experience to be able to be where I am today. We talk about the distractions and things that, especially now more than ever for me, I'm getting tugged in different directions and people wanting this and they want me to review this product or that product. And I'm able to draw on all the experience. I'm able to draw on the personal side of my life, the recovery process, and what I've learned there in terms of being able to treat people with respect, treat people with courtesy, kindness, justice, and love. Those are the four sort of key words that we use in terms of reminding ourselves about how to treat people at all times whenever we can remember to. And going about it that way, and not putting somebody down and saying, I don't have time for this, and being sort of egotistical about it, but rather coming back and saying, hey, I'm more than happy to look at whatever you've got. Just try and understand that I have a process, and I'll try and get to it as soon as I can, kind of thing.
Yeah. One of the things that I saw in you when I first met you is your incredible positive outlook on almost anything. Things can be going really badly, and I've seen you in places where it's not going well, and you just always come back with this positive. It's you just like you won't let negative in, and that's something I see in you all the time.
Thank you. I appreciate you noticing that. It's something I work hard at, and in fact, it's interesting. Because I'm always looking for outlets of my own for ways to improve myself.
Right.
And it's interesting. One of my clients, as I'm paying his bills, of course, and I see who he's paying, I noticed a recurring payment to this one doctor. And I asked him about it. I said, who is this guy? And he said, and it turns out the doctor is a very well-renowned sports psychiatrist. He works with very high-performing athletes. And I recently stumbled on a video of his by coincidence, this doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And the video was about a professional race car and the mindset that race car driver has. And he talks in the first couple of minutes of this video about getting into that flow state.
Right.
When you are in such a groove because you know what you're doing so well, it's cerebral, exactly, you don't have to think about it, you just do.
Right.
And you're in that mindset where there's no thoughts going through your mind. Your mind is completely blank because you're just doing, you're engaged in the process, and you don't have to think about it. And he explains that when he talks with very high-performing athletes who are at the top of their game at what they do, he says they report that they spend 85% of their time working really hard at keeping that positive mindset going. So it's only 15% of the time that they get to enjoy that flow state that they're in. The rest of the time we're working really hard, and I have to do that too, because I promise you I have my moments where I get up some days and I'm frustrated and this isn't going right and that's not going right, and when is this going to end, and when is it just going to get easy, right? It's easy to slip into that mindset, and it becomes that much more important to me to slip myself out of that mindset.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Seth. It's just been great having you here in the neighborhood, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere soon, either at a conference somewhere or somewhere else in person. But good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Doug. I can't wait.
So thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.